Very interesting story to report. It appears that the wheels are falling off the Congress wagon. For a while now, Rahul Gandhi has been taking pot shots at Prime Minister Modi for not putting India's interests first by pursuing an allegedly infirm foreign policy that yields under the slightest pressure or one that is inconsistent and directionless. This is what the Congress has been saying. But the Congress got a rude shock today when Shashi Tharoor once again held up a mirror to it by praising Modi diplomacy, especially in the context of maintaining strategic autonomy in the narrow context of the Ukraine war. This is what Shashi Tharoor said. He has gone back on his old stand. A few years ago, when the war broke out, he condemned India for not taking a position on the war which was pro-Ukraine, pro-West. Today he says, I have egg on my face, I might have got it wrong. Listen in, viewers.
Yes, I'm still wiping the egg off my face because I was the one person in the parliamentary debate who actually criticized the Indian position at the time, back in February 22. There was a violation of the UN Charter, that there had been a violation of the principle of the inviolability of borders, of the sovereignty of a member state, namely Ukraine, and we had always stood for the inadmissibility of the use of force to settle international disputes, and all of those principles, I said, had been violated by one party, and we should have condemned it. The fact that we're not in Europe, and we're not directly, one way or the other, threatened or benefiting from any change in territorial borders, for example, that helps. The fact that the two parties seem to be ready to agree to peace. The fact that there would presumably be some very serious international backing for an international peacekeeping venture. I mean, all of those things have to be borne in mind before you answer the question that you just asked, Yella. As an Indian government a person making such a decision, those considerations would really have to be uppermost before they say yes or no. But I can see it entirely possible that in these circumstances, India would say yes.
Well, at least Mr. Tharoor has it in him, viewers, to put the national interest above political considerations, especially narrow partisan ones. Earlier too, Mr. Tharoor contradicted the Congress line by congratulating Modi for holding his own against President Trump a month ago when the two leaders met in Washington, D.C. Then Shashi Tharoor said, and I'm talking about February 14, 2025, he said, and I quote, I think that's a very good outcome because otherwise the fear was there might be some hasty decisions made in Washington which would have affected our exports. This way, there is time to discuss and negotiate. We have got all that we could have expected except for an assurance in the way the migrants were sent back, unquote. Now, viewers, of course, the question arises, is there egg on the Congress's face, to paraphrase Shashi Tharoor's or borrow from his lexicon the phrase that he used? But more than that, viewers, the worry is that had perhaps the Congress, and let's open this up to some of our experts and some of those who have an opinion on this issue and the direct stakeholders. The worry is for me, and I want to bring in Sushant Sareen, the worry is for me, Sushant Sareen, the real worry is that had, let's say, the Congress been in power by some dint of fate, it is presumable that they would have put certain political considerations above maybe the national interest or maybe just ideological considerations and thrown in their lot with the West or with Ukraine, and we would have actually had to suffer the consequences of a miscalculation. I'm not saying that that could easily have been done, not done or undone, etc. by this regime, but at least they took a path. Now that is my worry at one level. We would have been part of the problem here.
Rahul, the Congress party in the past, I don't know what today's Congress party would have done, but the Congress party in the past has taken certain stances on international issues according to what they perceive to be the Indian national interest. Now, I think what Mr. Modi's government did was that it never really endorsed the Russian invasion of Ukraine, but it didn't, also toe the Western line to berate Russia, criticize it, condemn it, because, we really had no dog in the fight, number one, and number two, we had very vital national interests attached. Now, frankly, like Mr. Shashi Tharoor, I myself was a little skeptical whether we'll be able to stay the course when the pressure from the Western government start coming in. And I think what goes to the credit of the Modi government is that they not only resisted the pressure, they continued to doing what they thought was in India's best interest. And as things have turned out, it seems that they made the right call. Now, I think Mr. Tharoor has been gracious enough to accept that he made the wrong judgment at that point of time, that his own viewpoint on what India should have done has not been borne out by how things have turned out subsequently. So I think he's gracious enough to accept it, which is, I think, what politicians should be ready to do, because when the situation on the ground tells you that you were wrong back then, I don't think there's anything wrong in accepting that you were wrong. So what the Congress party would have done, only the Congress party would have said. But I think the Congress party of maybe 20 years back, maybe 30 years back, might have not voted on the basis of, or not acted on the basis of ideological or political interest, but on national interest. Today's Congress party, I'm afraid, I don't think I can say what exactly they're going to do, because sometimes...
Well, let me ask you a follow-up question, Mr. Sareen. Given the manner in which the Congress party has chosen sides, let's say in West Asia, as Israel and Palestine, or at least the Hamas, have engaged in a conflict, would you say that again, in that narrow theater, has the Congress put ideology above national interests? Would you have done that, for example, taken such a position? The Indian government's been nuanced. Even today, they condemned the loss of innocent lives while saying that the interests of the hostages should be safeguarded, and that, of course, quickly these individual feuding sides need to resolve their issues.
You're asking me?
Yes.
Yeah. So look, I think the position that the Congress party took on the Gaza conflict was quite problematic, because they seem to only be supporting one side and not condemning the actions of October 7th enough, not saying that what happened on October 7th is completely unacceptable, and not going all out on the issue of the hostages. It was almost as though the hostages being taken is perfectly kosher. I think deeply problematic, and I don't think it was entirely ideological. I think it was more political. Because there are no Jewish votes, but there are a lot of Muslim votes, and because the Muslim vote bank might be swayed by whatever position you take on Palestine, so that is the position you should take, regardless of whether that's morally the correct position or whether that is a position that protects India's national interest.
Interesting. Very interesting. Very interesting. Mr. Meka, is that really the political interests of the Congress that align with certain, perhaps, constructs that don't allow them to appreciate Modi diplomacy for what it is, which is India first? Is that what's happening?
Rahul, very clearly, Congress, as far as the external affairs are concerned, Congress stands by India's stand. That's it. There is no question about a political interest.
But Mr. Meka, no, I mean, I'm sorry. Rahul Gandhi has been critical of... of the Prime Minister's stand on many issues with regards to foreign policy. So how can you say... Now, I'm only asking... Okay, let me ask you a simple question. Will Rahul Gandhi come out? Oh, fine. Let me reposition it. Why has the Congress party distanced itself from Mr. Tharoor? Does it believe that Mr. Tharoor doesn't know his onions? He may know his eggs, but doesn't know his onions. Does he not know what he's talking about? No. Is he putting his own political interests first? So why is the Congress distancing itself from Mr. Tharoor? Not once, now twice.
I'll tell. It's not the question of Mr. Tharoor not knowing his onions. If he knows his onions also, he knows his egg also on his face. He can make an omelette for himself. That's not the point. It is Mr. Tharoor who can speak for himself. It's not Congress party, or he's one of the Congress leaders. He's
one of the Congress leaders, but when a man of his stature, he's been a former diplomat, he has had vast experience in government. with respects to the
Rahul?
foreign policy portfolio. And if he has taken a position, either you come out and say, look, for these reasons we disagree with him, or you say, no, we agree with him. Palpably we agree with him. You can't say, no, it's his own decision and, good luck to him.
Congress party will not work on each individual. We have lakhs of leaders throughout the country.
I don't want to be too blunt with you, but Mr. Meka, I'll ask you this.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
Has Rahul Gandhi misread the situation? Simple.
No.
He hasn't endorsed the Prime Minister's views on Ukraine, by the way. The Congress, if anything, has been asking the Indian government to vote alongside countries that are supporting Ukraine, even in the United Nations. So I'm asking you, has Rahul Gandhi and the Congress think tank misread the situation?
No, not at all.
Okay.
Congress party understands what is in the India's interest, and Congress party lets the government of the day do its job.
Okay, so you're saying that the Congress party, if it knows what it is doing, because it puts India's interests first, and because it has been critical of Mr. Modi not taking a position in the United Nations for abstaining in at least 4 votes on Ukraine, is wrong, and they are right. Now, viewers, judge it for yourself. Tharoor said it was the right call. The Congress believes, no, it's not the right call. Who would have taken us further? You judge for yourself. But Sanju Verma, yes, you want to make a point. What is your point? Are you going to say that, oh, the Congress has got into this habit of opposing for opposition's sake? Is that what you're going to say? I don't want to second guess you, but what's your point?
Rahul, I think a very serious debate. You turned it into, eggs versus onions. I don't know whether Shashi Tharoor knows his eggs from his onions, but I certainly know that Rahul Gandhi knows nothing about eggs or onions, but certainly knows a lot about his pastas and his pizzas. But coming to the more serious point, less than 72 hours back, this is what the Deputy Foreign Minister, of Poland had to say. He says, we had a great visit of Prime Minister Modi to Warsaw. PM Modi did persuade Putin not to use nuclear tactical weapons. We want permanent peace. We want stable and sustainable peace in Ukraine. So this is a foreign dignitary from Poland, the Deputy Foreign Minister, no less, saying that yes, Prime Minister Modi did play an instrumental and integral role in preventing what could have been a nuclear disaster. And for everybody who engages in nuclear saber rattling, let me also say that, in March 2024, US officials told CNN that the Joe Biden administration at that time enlisted help from China and India to discourage Putin from launching nuclear attacks. And don't forget that in the Bali Declaration of 2022, the G20 summit that was held at Bali in Indonesia in 2022, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's statement made headlines. This is not an era of war. It is the time for dialogue.
Okay.
I hope you can go back 3 years back and reinforce the fact to your viewers that Prime Minister Modi has never spared an opportunity to reinforce and reiterate that dialogue alone is the solution. And, Ukraine and, Zelensky might be egged and might be provoked into believing that, the European Union is with you and Germany is with you and France is with you. But at the end of the day, this is a war that Ukraine will lose if push comes to shove. And saying it in so many words without needling the Ukrainians, I think that is what Modi's diplomacy is all about.
Okay, so let me take that question now to Mr. Ashutosh Mishra, senior journalist and analyst. Mr. Mishra, it's possible that Ukraine and Russia will sign a deal. And had India followed the Congress party's advice by backing Ukraine wholeheartedly, we might have lost a friend, a long-term ally in Russia, in Moscow. We would have embittered it, alienated it. So I'm asking you, as Sanju Verma sort of ended and pick up from where she ended, has Modi proved that India's interests are safe or safest with him?
I don't think so. All you have to do is what she was saying, that he has said, Modi said that it's not the era of war. Has the war ended? Has Putin listened to him? No. Putin humors him because even despite the Western embargo, he continued to buy oil and other things from him. And what did Zelensky say just after Modi left Ukraine? He said he had asked Mr. Modi to stop buying Russian oil, and that sort of exposed the duplicity of Modi government. I mean, he was trying to hunt with the hounds and run with the hares. I mean, you can't be in the good books of both the invader and the victim. That's what he has been trying to do for quite some time. Zelensky won't listen to him now. If you see, Putin doesn't listen even to Trump. Immediately when there was a talk about there being a 30-day ceasefire, there has been bombing from both the sides. So the war is there. So this thought process that there is no war. Now, Tharoor had spoken about certain points, why he had criticized the stand. And he said that it was because there was a violation of UN Charter, that the principle of inviolability of borders and Ukraine's sovereignty were relevant when he spoke. But they're relevant even today. Ukraine
So
is under attack still
that
today.
Tharoor has sold himself
Rahul,
to the BJP? What are you saying? I'm not understanding. Why would, if Tharoor can say that he has egg on his face, he's an erudite person. He's read the situation and he said, maybe I got it wrong.
Maybe he's not trying to put all his eggs in one basket. I mean, Tharoor's statement and stand are as irrelevant and useless as Modi's visits to Ukraine and Russia.
Okay.
oh my God, can I please come in? Ashutosh Mishra
Both
has a habit of talking gibberish on national TV.
somehow or the
Okay,
other
let-
remain
Ashutosh Mishra
Verma.
is a
where
Congress
they have
Garbari.
lost ground.
One second.
That is the only thing.
Okay, so you believe that Modi's approach has been running with the hares and hunting with the hound. He's not achieved anything. Okay, very quickly, I want two point of views on that. One is, of course, Sanju Verma's quick rebuttal, and then an overview from Sushant Sareen. Yeah.
You know, Rahul, for Ashutosh Mishra to be waxing eloquent about foreign policy is such a sham. And I, could only feel sorry for him and tell him not to embarrass himself.
You make personal
It's
attacks
his
on
view, it's
don't
his
have
view.
facts to support what you are
Okay, it's
saying.
his view.
Can I
अरे ये
please-
आप पर्सनल अटैक
Can I
छोड़िए,
please- I
पॉलिसी
did
की
not
बात
hear him when
करिए.
he was talking.
आपके पास कुछ
I did
कहने
not
को
hear
नहीं
him
होता
when
तो
he
you
was
start
talking,
this.
Rahul.
Okay, don't have to take a personal jab. Make your point. Yes, Sanju Verma.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, I was not taking a personal jab. I was showing him the mirror, and he did not like the reflection that he saw. Now let me come
No,
straight
you
to the
don't
point.
like when I show you the mirror
he
and
has
say
his
Modi the
point of
mirror.
view.
Rahul, can I finish?
Yeah, please.
Can I finish?
Yeah, finish
Rahul?
your
I
point.
did not heckle him.
Yeah, finish
Yes.
your point. Finish your
I think to Narendra Modi goes the credit, whether you hate him or you love him. You cannot deny the fact that this is the foremost prime minister in post-independent India to have dehyphenated our foreign policy with respect to Israel and Palestine. As Shashi Tharoor said, within 2 weeks of visiting Ukraine, he actually also visited Russia and hugged both Putin and Zelensky.
Okay,
and
fair
I
enough.
must admit, I have to
But
wipe it off my face is what Tharoor said.
Ashutosh Mishra's point is that is suggestive of somebody abandoning morality altogether. That you are acceptable in both the victim as well as the aggressor's camp is not really something that we should be lionizing. Sushant Sareen, how do you respond to that?
Look, what the purpose of foreign policy is not to promote moral science around the world. The purpose of foreign policy is to defend and advance India's national interest, just like every other country in the world does, right? So if Mr. Modi was trying to protect and advance India's interest, he was doing the right thing. Now, the thing is that in the past, in the 50s and the 60s, when the then Soviet Union, with which we had very close relationship, invaded Czechoslovakia and Hungary, the great Mr. Nehru, who fancied himself to be a great diplomat, what was his position? Did he ever utter a word? When the Soviets walked into Afghanistan, did we ever go openly against the Soviets? Was that a moral thing to do at that point of time? The governments at that point of time did what they thought was in India's best interest. Similarly, Mr. Modi did what he thought was in India's best interest. Why it goes to Mr. Modi's credit is that back then, our relationship with the West was not as deep and close as it is today. So we were not very susceptible to Western pressures as much as we were today. And yet to be able to resist Western pressures, to keep them with us, and yet continue to forward our own interests with Russia and not completely junk Ukraine was, I think, a feather in the cap of Indian diplomacy.
And that's what Shashi Tharoor is claiming.
Can I quickly come in here?
No, one second, I have to wrap up. I've really run out of time. But that's what I think Shashi Tharoor is saying. And he's bringing to bear his experience. Maybe the Congress party needs to open its eyes and rub the egg off its face. See the situation for what it is, unblinkered.